The Honorable Senate is resumed. Senator Douglas, you have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, I would like to start off by saying thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this debate, and I must say that I feel honored. This is my second occasion to contribute to the national budget of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Madam President, I would like to record my commendations to our opposition leader for providing a sharp, clinical, and passionate rebuttal to the budget by expressing the reality of what our citizens are faced with today, particularly the poor and the vulnerable. Madam President, truth be told, I sat and I tried to listen to the presentation of the budget by the dear Minister of Finance. But my dear brother had so many struggles in his delivery. It's a fact. And I confirmed it as a professional out there when people met me and they said, Katisha, I really tried to listen to the budget because I want to understand what is going on. But I could not have. After I listened to the first 2 minutes, I had to close down. So I trust, that you'll be able to educate me. Because the brother was eating his words. I don't know what was causing the struggle. The communication was poor, the articulation was poor, and the nation was confused. It was just, in my opinion, an embarrassment. Madam President, nevertheless, I have my duty. So I sat and I read the budget statement, which contains 64 pages. I didn't have a choice. And while reading, all I could have done was to shake my head in dismay. Madam President, I followed the dramatic performances in the Parliament. One would think that we are still in the campaign season. Madam President, the campaign is over, and I want to put this on record. This is time for serious business. The House is not a place for passing pipe and airing grievances and taking things personal. This is a place for serious business. This is a place for the people's business, and I want to make that fundamentally clear. Madam President, I would like to say with no apologies that this 2024 budget represents nothing but a failure of this government's ability to address the real burning issues that are affecting our citizens, particularly the less fortunate. Madam President, I stand to be ready to be called pessimistic, but let me place on the record that I'm here to fight the good fight and to be the voice for the voiceless, cost it what it will. Madam President, while the revenues are up, and the statement says so, largely due to the sale of passports and the reinstatement of VAT on electricity, VAT on sugar, the charge on water, basic commodity, water, and inflammation, the result in the large tax yield. The question remains, how are these excess spent allocated to be spent? Madam President, in the period of high youth unemployment, increase in crime and violence, we must consider the programs and policies that the government has outlined in this budget to address these burning issues. This is our reality, Madam President, the context in which every Grenadian operates. Yet, with all the antics, not a single new project or initiative. And the fact is, people are waiting to hear that because you hear it all the time. When you walk the streets, you go around, they're asking, okay, what are the new initiatives that this government is implementing? Nothing new. Instead, The ministers came with a pipe in their honorable house and speaking nonsense about the pipeline. The people of this nation don't want to hear anything about the pipeline. Whatever is in the pipeline was birthed by NMP, and this government inherited it. Fact. Tell us what's new, and we're willing to work with the new initiatives. Madam President, the contents of this budget prove that this government is not only lacking ideas, and maybe, that's not so true. Maybe they just need a little more time to come up with great ideas. But it also appears that they are inhumane, maybe unintentionally, selfish, insensitive, inconsiderate, and impulsive, just to list a few, because they will throw things out there, and I'm sure the public could attest to that. And it appears they want to see how the public is going to react, and then they will retract based on the public temperament. Madam President, I would like to focus on some key areas in my presentation, such as housing and social services, healthcare, national security, education, and inflation. Madam President, $9 million is budgeted for Project 500. I like the name, Project 500. That's excellent. And I will support any initiative or program that will benefit our citizens. Make no doubt about that. However, if backtracked to the approach of the so-called caring government took with the free housing units donated by the People's Republic of China, we can safely say these houses are not intended for the low or no-income people. The mere fact, Madam President, that this category of persons was asked to approach a financial institution to secure a loan to make upfront payments for housing units that were donated, the operative word is donated, one can naturally expect that the houses that are to be built in the government Project 500 will not be targeting this group, which is very sad and disheartening. And I trust that the government will prove me wrong, our members on the other side. Madam President, to obtain a mortgage in this era, we know it's not an easy process. Many of us have gone through it. Many of us are prepared to go through it. Having a life insurance is mandatory. Plus, you have to have a set of additional fees, including legal fees. But this government is asking these vulnerable people who should be getting these houses for free, or in some cases at low cost, to try and get a mortgage to pay up front. I would like for them to help me and the public to understand that. Well, we need to educate the public about it, about whatever programs. Madam President, I don't say that, and I trust that I'm going on the basis that I don't know of any programs. So the fact is, I don't know. I'm just hearing it now to cushion that. The fact is that decision can be deemed as insensitive, to put these people through this process, knowing most of them will not qualify. So a lot of them will be out of houses, and I'm speaking about what I know today. When the government come to educate the public and myself, then I could speak on whatever they have in place. But for now, I have to speak on the basis of what I know. So while we look forward to Project 500 in 2024, we are still seeking to find those Tony got houses that were budgeted in 2023. I'm not sure when they're going to stream online. That will be additional to the Project 500, I hope. Madam President, moving on to seed. I remember the last budget debate, my dear friend, Mr. Thomas, and we're from the same parish, said, and I quote, "When you hear poor and vulnerable, you think about NMP. When you hear transformation, you think about NDC, end quote. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Glad to see your energy and enthusiasm. But do keep in mind Section 36 of the Standing Orders. Contents of speech should not verge on being insulting or offensive in any way. So just watch the use of words like speaking nonsense. Just be guided by that. No offensive or insulting language, because I'm sure none is intended. Thank you. Continue.
Okay, Madam President, thank you for that, but I didn't know that that word would have been insulting. Nevertheless, Madam President, we are more than happy to be representing the poor and the vulnerable. And I'm going back to the statement that my dear friend made. Because, of course, they're the ones in need. And we're happy to represent them. And we'll continue to support them no matter what. But, Madam President, I was surprised when I heard the leader of government business in his presentation said, they see the path to reduce and eliminate the poor and the vulnerable syndrome. What happened? I don't know. You move from hearing transformation when we hear NDC and we adapting poor and vulnerable from NMP. That's what we're trying to do. But we are happy. We are pleased to hear at least the poor and the vulnerable are still at the forefront of your minds. Madam President, Honorable Gloria Thomas stood in this very house a year ago, I remember that vividly, and promised beneficiaries of the SEED program that they will continue to receive the $150 that the NNP-led administration put in place. She said, we are going to continue. A month later, the recipients were shocked to learn that the funds were removed. Madam President, I ask the following questions through you based on Senator Gloria's comments today. Who playing with the minds of the vulnerable? Who is playing on the intelligence? Who is playing on the minds of the citizens who can't read? Who? Madam President, the removal of the 150 hit the nation so hard that the very same senator called it a prank when beneficiaries started to receive calls saying that they're no longer on the list. Not me, I'm not making up any stories. This is what's happening, or this is what happened. Madam President, so I ask, I don't know who is trying to fool who. I don't know. Madam President, the government still came and they've tried to defend the move, right? Defended it, as opposed to taking a step back as leaders, because that's what leaders do. No one is perfect. We make mistakes. But what's important, we take ownership for the mistakes that we make. The very same government tried to defend that did not happen. And these people suffered. The mere fact, because they built their life around the extra 150. And they suffered. They were unable to buy basic medication or food. Some of them couldn't even send their children to school or whatever because of the removal of that. And it's a fact. It was a hard blow, and we cannot ignore it. Madam President, now this very same government is knocking their chest and blowing trumpets because of the $50 increase to 26% of the SEED beneficiaries, while 74%, comprising mainly of children and chronically ill beneficiaries, remain unattended. Madam President, I'm confused. Moreover, the government promised $650, and that's great. That's great. to all the state beneficiaries. So we promised the 650. Why did we didn't budget for it? The 650, that's what they're expecting. They're not expecting a $50 increase on the 150 that we gave them. Madam President, I would like to say, there's an old saying, Tom drunk, but Tom not fool. I hope that's not offensive, according to the standing order. Madam President, the fact that the government can sit in a room, that has extensive dialogue around it, I heard it, and significantly increase the minister's allowances, right? I got it right, allowances, and spend $15 million on independence celebrations. We're happy we're reaching 50 years. But the million-dollar question is, why cut the support given to the marginalized children and chronically ill persons? Why? We collected more revenue, but we failed to spend on the people who need it. But instead, we're spending on fetty and ourselves. I can tell you for sure, money is not a motivator for me in this house today. What is motivating me is to be able to be the voice of the people and to serve the people. It's not a motivator. It will never be. It has never been and it will never be. Something about this transformational agenda, when I sit down and I try to connect it, it's not working for a specific category of people in our country today. Say what we want, believe it, or believe what we want. It's not working for a certain category. Madam President, the bushing, the transformers, because we're going based on the transformational agenda, change it to, and I want to get it right, beautification, empowerment, sustainability, and transformation at best. Madam President, I want to remind our NMP government over the years implemented large debushing programs to help persons without a steady income or permanent jobs. For example, during the Christmas season, one would have seen over 6,000 pushing people enrolled in the program since October. Madam President, this increased the circulation of money in the economy. You could have seen it. The small community jobs, the Indian stores, all the small businesses benefited compared to what we are seeing now. And that's a fact. You have people saying, okay, well, bush hanging down. When we go when it's going to cut? My vehicle scratching or my children passing on the bush. People saying it. Our citizens are complaining about it. I'm not making up the story. Madam President, this government cut the best program by $6 million, $6.7 million. $6.7 million cut, Madam President. Why is it called best? When it's treated in an opposite way, makes no sense. It appears this government takes pride in seeing people suffer. Madam President, I'm sorry, no apologies. That's what it appears. And I know that's not the intention, but actions speaks louder than words. Madam President, we all know the program, the WASH program. We hear a lot about it, WASH. But we called it before the bathroom and toilet program. That's what we called it. It was renamed to WASH. And that's fine. We know it's not new. The concept is not new. For many years, the NMP was in government. We built toilets and bathrooms for citizens throughout the length and breadth of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Every year, based on what I can recall, we budgeted for this program. Madam President, the government has merely altered the name and collected monies for the program, But what even was, they did not even have the innovation to make up their own name. If you wanted to change it to WASH, at least we could have come up with something. WASH is a common name all over the world. A matter of fact, with the Rotary Club, I think that's where it was copied. But nevertheless, we budgeted for that program. It's not a new program. And the mere fact that we can make it look because of a name change that it's new is unfair. As my brother Cox said, he's not here. There's a name to describe, when people are taking credit for things that they never created. Madam President, on the topic of the implementation of the twice monthly payment. Madam President, the twice monthly payments were imposed on the public sector. It was not requested. I guess it's something that was campaigned on. It was mandated. The fundamental question is still open. Is this policy helping the economy in any way? I would love to know. Many would love to know. The members on the other side said it's working, and they probably know what they base it on. But Madam President, through you, I would like to take the opportunity to ask for the data, whatever data you have to show that this policy is indeed a success. Madam President, the first blunder that was made with this policy, because the government, they call it an achievement. That to me is the #1 achievement listed in the budget statement. I might be wrong and I stand to be corrected. And that's why I'm talking about it today. The first blunder that was made with this policy, it was announced and then the government sought consultation. So it was done the reverse way. As opposed to reaching out to the key stakeholders to find out, what you think about this policy and how you think that, persons are going to react to it, that wasn't done after the fact. But I guess when you have power, you have to use power. And you have to use it at all costs, So I leave that one right there. Madam President, such a drastic policy, because remember, the public sector have been accustomed to, they build a life around getting paid once a month. Such change or such policy implementation, you want to believe that financial literacy programs with the citizens before implementation would have been a very important step, just to educate people as to what is going to happen or what are the possibilities with this policy. But that was never done, and we're talking about we care about people, and maybe we are, but again, our actions and the things that we do is not showing that we truly care. Madam President, truth be told, I would love to see this bi-monthly formula, how it's going to work for Christmas. I'm not being negative. I want to make that clear. Right? But I'm being realistic, asking, because it's alleged that there are already complaints that are coming from the public sector, and most chronically from the Ministry of Health. And then the Minister of Health is here, and I hope he will be able to speak towards that there are cases of public servants getting paid late with that whole bi-monthly policy. So I do hope these employees get paid on time to do their Christmas shopping. Moreover, Madam President, workers in the public sector will receive half of their pay before Christmas Day. Half. So I don't know how's that going to work. Again, they know the formula, and I guess they have a way to work around that. And I trust that they do, because people need to spend money. People need to be able to shop for the Christmas. Madam President, after reviewing and looking at the statement and listening to my dear friends on the other side, I urge them, please, there is nothing hard or difficult in being transparent. Because at the end of the day, if we implement a policy and it's not working 100%, let's say, listen, we try this, our intention was for it to work out in the citizens or the people's favor, but it did not work out 100%, but it worked out 80%, as opposed to leading people to believe, a different thing. So we have to stop the deception. If it's not working, it's not working. And it happens. It happens in business every day. It happens in our lives. we would try to do something and it may not work. So we need to stop the deception. The fact is, based on feedback, it's alleged that the bi-monthly salary is not working 100%. And it was labeled as one of their main achievements. The topic of healthcare, Madam President. Madam President, our beloved Prime Minister in the 2023 budget announced the biggest allocation in history in their budget was for healthcare. Healthcare was considered the #1 priority for the government in their manifesto and a critical topic of the transformational agenda, which is great because healthcare, everybody wants a top-notch healthcare system in their country. Madam President, I support the notion of healthcare being a key priority, and I also do not fault the government for their expressed intentions there. That's the truth. But what saddens me, Madam President, is the fact that $27 million of the largest budget in the history of Grenada remain unspent when we lack basic medication in our health facilities. Madam President, tell me something. Is this demonstrating competence and good governance, as a government claim? I don't know. You know what? Citizens refers to our hospital as a ghetto because that's the worst they have seen in our health care. The lack of basic medication, which I experienced personally when I went to the hospital in July to give birth to my son. I was served with a prescription to purchase blood pressure medication and medication to induce labor in July. I personally experienced it. I could have gone elsewhere, but I decided to go to our general hospital. Because even though citizens are calling it ghetto, let me experience the ghetto. I want to experience it. I want to feel what the people feel it. And I felt it. But thank God, Madam President, I could afford. What about the patients and families that can't? But then we have $27 million unspent. So why didn't we spend it? Why? Because medication is something that we must have in the hospital. So why, again, Madam President, through you, I hope the Minister of Health can answer to the people of this country why we have $27 million that we did not spend. I'm not making up any stories. I would also recommend to the Minister of Health to take the time, and maybe he did already, I don't know, and he would have to say, I don't want to be able to put words in anyone's mouth. Take the time and conduct roundtable meetings with the nurses, the doctors, and the other members in the medical fraternity. Hear what they have to say. Let it come from their mouths. Right? I also urge him, because I've seen it on the news where you have the union leaders crying out that they want to get in touch with the Minister of Health, and he's always busy. They're speaking to the permanent secretary. But I want the Minister of Health to take the opportunity to meet with these people, to have the hard conversations, because the fact is, the nurses, the doctors, and all of them, they're burning. They have burning issues. And maybe he's aware of it, and if he is, Madam President, again through you, I want him to be able to stand up and say, I'm aware of the issues, and here's what we're doing. Madam President, on the topic of national security, there has been an increase in gun-related crimes. It's very sad. Crimes and violence, robberies in our country. Not saying it wasn't there before. And I want to ensure that People hear me right. But there's an increase. And it's frightening. It makes people uneasy. Even me, I feel insecure, unsafe, not to mention our visitors. Madam President, it's known globally that Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique always had a peaceful reputation. Today, people are asking, where is the Minister of National Security and the Prime Minister, as the brutal victimization continues in our police force? Transfers of policemen and women. I don't want to hear it was done before. This is a government that came with an agenda of transformation and doing things differently. So let's do things differently. Okay? The transfers of policemen and women, the massive resignations and early retirement driven by demoralization, demotivation, and unfair treatment. Madam President, is disheartening. The security of our country is not something to joke with. It is not. There's a real security crisis in our country today, like it or not. It's a fact. Now, trying to backfill employees in the police force. So the poor new recruits now, they're coming in, they're joining in the police force and getting 4 weeks of training. 4 weeks. What training can a police officer, new recruit, get within 4 weeks that will enable them to be the employee, to serve in full capacity and protect this nation? 4 weeks. Why we change it? Madam President, through you, can I ask? Because these are questions that are pending and people would like to hear answer. Why we change the training program to 4 weeks? It's just not making sense, Madam President. So I would like for them to help us make sense out of it. Madam President, on the topic of education, I heard a lot about no school fees, free education. It's all good. But Madam President, it's a known fact that schools in the country, in our country, don't have to pay school fees per se. They don't have to. I mean, we know that I've been to secondary school. What I remember and what I know, the objects that parents contribute to are the things like the report books, the ties, the labs, etc. And Madam President, that hasn't changed unless I'm missing something. Because today, based on my understanding, parents are still making the very same contribution. We could ask them. Madam President, the tuition for TAMCC and NULO, my brother over there spoke about it extensively. But it's my understanding it's a one-time charge per school term, and the government is only providing $810 per student in the case of TAMCC. Any area of studies that costs more than $810, the excess charge must be borne by the student. Again, we need clarity. If this is not true, we need to provide clarity. But this is my findings after doing extensive research. Additionally, Madam President, this government cut the transportation support for students in the rural communities by 50%, which is $1.2 million. Why you cut it? Why we cut the transportation? So we advertising and we knocking with chest about free education, but then we have children that cannot access it because they cannot afford transportation. I don't understand. So something is not connecting right at all. Why cut the transportation? We want children to access free education from all parts of the country. And those that need transportation, we provided transportation. Why take away the funds for it? Why cut the funds, Madam President? I don't know. I really don't want the public to be able to get a sense of hypocrisy and cruelty, you know. But these things it's not connecting with what we're saying and what the reality is. We're saying that we love the children of the nation. Let us show in every aspect that we love the children of this nation. Madam President, to be honest, I do a lot of, since I came from maternity leave, and even before that, try my best to be on the ground, connecting with people and listening to people. And one of the burning issues, because my ears tired hearing, and you hear it once you travel across the country. The cry of the people because of the consistent rise in cost of living. The Minister of Finance said, and I quote from the budget statement on page 8, they say, to make sure I quote it right, I'll start over, and I quote, they say they love the poor and the vulnerable, but we are the ones that removed the VAT on 19 basic food and other necessities, introduced an electricity subsidy for less fortunate and households, lowered the petrol tax on gas and diesel, and maintain existing safety nets. This we will continue to do so, end quote. I wish I could have imitated his voice, but I am unable to do so. But Madam President, the Minister of Finance must know that these 19 items are not price controlled, and therefore the government cannot regulate the cost of the consumer. This fact was even acknowledged in the budget speech as a point of expected consultation with stakeholders. Madam President, today an ordinary person cannot take $500 and go into the groceries and get substantial foodstuff to last them a month. They can't. So we would love to know, and maybe they highlight it, but we would love to know the 19 basic food items. The 19 basic food items that don't have VAT on it. Because the basic food items we're talking about that people would go into the supermarket or the small shops on a day-to-day basis to buy would be sugar, flour, pasta, oil, saltfish, and these things. But you cannot tell me with that current price that you don't have VAT on it. So we would love to know the 19 foods that doesn't have VAT. The fact is, Madam President, our citizens are struggling to live. They're struggling to live because of the cost of living. It's hard to live in our country today. In my opinion, the government made no efforts to put cushions in place that would help ease citizens from food and fuel global inflation. Instead, they implemented tax policies and put a significant burden on the Grenadians. The removal of the fuel cap has allowed gas and diesel to be increased to approximately $17. We're waiting this month to see what it's going to be. While on September 17, 2022, the Minister of MIT posted on social media, and I quote the text, "Why cap it when we can give it for less?" We had a cap of $15 for several months. Where you $15, now it passed $15 because the cap was removed, and you're still coming back and say, why cap it when you can give it for less? I don't understand the games. Madam President, we need to stop playing games. The livelihood of people, we are messing with it. And we need to stop that. Madam President, reintroducing VAT on electricity, reintroducing the petrol tax on gas, the petroleum products, right? Place a 15% VAT on sugar, which I spoke about, the sugary drinks, the increase in excise taxes on alcohol, increase license fees for road users, and impose a charge on water, which I mentioned before, Madam President. The fact remains people cannot afford to live under the leadership of this government. It's just hard. I am feeling the pinch myself. Madam President, it's getting late, so as I conclude, I ask this question. Who is this government serving? With this current government, in our view, or in my view, people's livelihoods is not being treated as a priority. Madam President, after closely scrutinizing the budget projections, the budget tells you the priority of this government. I don't see I need to go into it because the numbers, the presentation, it tells where the government priority is. The significant increases in the allowances, the travel budget by 115% in 2024, it's not a lie when they refer to of our government, and I have to say our government because we're under the Prime Minister, is the one that lives in the sky and manages Grenada and Carriacou and Petit Martinique from the sky. Some citizens are calling it the cloud government. Embarrassing. Madam President, about Parliament's allocated expenditure, vote 2. All the ministers of the government who are members of the House of Representatives or MPs except the Prime Minister would receive a $60,000 allowance per year, which is in addition to the $24,000 annual traveling allowance. Where is the priority of this government? It is clear while ministers enjoy significant increases, the rest of the public service was given a mingy 13% raise spread over 3 years. The Imani nurses and doctors who were promised to be made permanent by a stroke of a pen in the first 12 months are now provided with $500 and a $1,000 increase to keep them silent and to prevent them from marching the streets. State beneficiaries receive a mingy $50. I mean, it's $50 to make them forget about the months that the $150 was removed from them that were left and that left them to suffer by this movement. Madam President, the conditions of life that some of our people experience in today, very challenging, and it's intensifying due to the global inflation. And this government refused, I have to use the word refuse because we're in the budget cycle, to put measures in place to help ease the living conditions. And that's a fact. And if they plan to do so, they need to come and let the public know what they plan to do. But this budget does not represent that they plan to do so. Madam President, just the thought of taxing the $500 given to the nurses has worked very hard. I mean, I looked at them. As I said, having a life experience just make you open your eyes and appreciate more. They work very hard. The nurses and the doctors, you have to give them that. And they work hard because they have a passion. They have a passion. And I commended them. I made myself known to them and I commended them because you can see that they want to do well. But the $500 given to the nurses and the Imani, the $1,000 to the doctors, the $50 duty allowance provided to the police officers, and the 25% one-off payment to the public officers in December, the increase in NIS, which has affected all workers, is clear, and it indicates that this budget is not people-centered, as we are hitting our chest saying that it's people-centered. It's not people-centered. The facts are there. To make the situation worse, the Minister of Finance still has the belly and guts to say that they are not Santa Claus. Well, we know that. We know you're not Santa Claus. But what we don't expect that what you're giving to the people, that you impose in tax on it, so they're getting less. You want them to be able to reap the full benefit of what they're getting. If they're not Santa Claus, then there's this famous movie, I think they call it The Grinch. I hope this government don't want to come across as being the Grinch to people, stealing their Christmas joy. And I mean that, Madam President. Madam President, in December 2021, we gave double salaries. Madam President, in 2021, we gave double salaries to police, doctors, nurses, our frontline workers, and 50% to all public officers. I'm sure that they have it on record. And we never taxed it. So, Madam President, I ask the question through you. Why is this government can't honor the same? Why is it being taxed? And I would like for someone to answer the question, because I know that the nurses, the doctors, the public officers, they have the same question. Why are you taxing what you're giving me? So I trust that before we end the debate period, someone will be able to answer these questions, to provide clarity. Well, you're saying transformation, so don't talk about when we were there, talk about what you're doing now. Madam President, I encourage the other side to have some respect, please. Thank you, Madam President. Madam President, watching the needy and the vulnerable people of this country suffer, it's not very nice. But we're running around and we're painting walls in black and white, planting flowers, making false promises, being deceptive, and telling lies to the people of this country will not move this country forward. Focusing on the NMP and its political leader will not move this country forward. Saying the things that NMP should have done it when it was there will not move this country forward. The time, again, and I mentioned it before, and we can hear it here in our house, this honorable house today, for campaigning is over since June 23rd, 2022. So we need to get out of campaign mode and focus on nation building. Madam President, I end today, and I encourage this government. I encourage this government to start practicing good governance. Be transparent with our people and stop the deceit. There's a saying that corruption is cancer, a cancer that eats away at the citizens' faith in a government and its leaders. Happy you say amen to that. Thank you. Madam President, I want to say to the people of this country as I end today that there is hope. And I believe hope is around the corner. And I encourage them, don't give up. The market vendors, the fisher folks, the farmers, those who lost their jobs during the period of time, and we have a few people that lost their jobs. Hold on, and hope is around the corner. Don't give up. Madam President, I would like to say a special thank you to all those who've listened to the budget contributions, and a special thank you to all my colleagues for being the voice of the voiceless. You know that the struggle is real. Inflation is causing a lot of intensity, but you're going to get through it some way or the other, because all of us are impacted. So, Madam President, I close this afternoon by saying God bless all of us, and thank you so much for the opportunity to make my contribution.
Thank you, Senator Douglas. Thank you very much. And we have perhaps our last speaker for the day. I see he has risen to his feet. That's Senator Queens Britton, the man from the West. You have the floor, Senator.
Thank you, Madam President. And I say the West is always the best. So I see my colleague Senator on the other side. I agree to that statement that I made. West is the best. Pleasant evening to you, Madam President. And as we are in the Yuletide season, I rise here to support the budget presented by the Minister of Finance. The leader of government business on this side, and presented by the leader of the Minister of Finance last Monday. I would like to wish you well, you and the